Kia ora ana koutou katoa. Tui ai e te rangi e tui ho nei. Tui ai te papa e takoto nei. Tui ai te here tangata, ka rongo te poho, ka rongo te ao. Ti hei mauri ora. Ka tīmata mātou kei roto i tātou hui mo tēnei wā i roto i te karakia. No te mea nāna i homai, nāna i tango i ngā mea o ngā mea katoa. Nō reira, kia ino i tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki o tā, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hia ki ana te ata kura he tio, he hoka, he hauhu. Tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, tīna, haumi e hui e, tā e ki e. Kia ora ana koutou katoa, ko Oreo Ruka hau, ko Ngāpuhi me nā te tūwhare tō woku iwi. Nō reira, nau mai hara mai ki tēnei hui topa i te kōrero hōhonu i a tātou katoa ko te mana o te wai. Nō reira, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora. Nau mai, welcome to all of you here tonight sharing with this important kōrero. My name is Oreo Ruka and I'm the MC for this night tonight. And thank you for coming and sharing your evening with us in a time that is important for us to kōrero about mana o te wai and freshwater. The hui we are about to engage in tonight is around freshwater and also too the kaupapa around how tangata whenua view and see this as something to work together on. One with regional council, but also too we have special guests tonight that are here to speak around kaitiakitanga, what it is for our iwi, and to also to Council Kaimahi, who will be sharing with you about the work that Regional Council is doing around the freshwater work. What I'd like to do now is hand over to, and mihi to, our chairperson, our kahurangi, Tui Shortland, Tui Hoterine, at this time to begin with opening remarks. We welcome her and are thankful for her leadership as the chair for the newly elected and appointed Northern Regional Council. Nō reire te tuihine, nau mai haere mai kei ka tuku ahau te raka i a koe. Kia ora.
O tēnā koe Oreo, me mihi atu ahau ki a koe mō ngā reo whakawhetai tēnei po i rungi te kaupapa o te rā. Kia tātou katoa, kei roto i tēnei ruma, e mihi ana ahau ki a koutou katoa. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to Northern Regional Council's first online hui to talk about freshwater. Freshwater is one of the most pressing priorities for this council, given the climate emergency we are in. As an RMA practitioner, and more recently as one of the founding members of the Tangata Whenua Water Advisory Group, I've done a lot of thinking about freshwater planning and what we need to do differently. We know what a poor state our water is in and how important it is that we change what we're doing so that our water is improved. Without healthy water, we can't have healthy communities and sustainable livelihoods. I know from our neighbours in the Pacific Islands who have already had to declare national states of emergency due to lack of water in recent years, how precious our water is. And yet we're continuing to see declines in almost every aspect of the health and well-being of our water bodies here in Te Taitokerau. We're also very fortunate to have some of the rarest and most precious freshwater species and ecosystems in the world, and we need to protect and look after them better. The resilience of our freshwater taonga to the impacts of climate change is intimately linked to how healthy they are. If our waterways are healthy, then they are better able to cope with the ever-increasing impacts that climate change brings. We need to plan for what is coming and learn from our Pacific Island neighbours and all work to enhance our rivers and lakes, replant riparian margins and re-wet and expand our repo. We need to restore our connection with Te Hurihanga Wai, the hydrological cycle. Part of the work we did as the Tangata Whenua Water Advisory Group was to go through all the iwi and hapu environmental plans that the Regional Council had been given over the years. Tangata Whenua had been saying for a long time that we need to value and look after our water. The way that we do that has to change. This is nothing new, but now we're running out of time. We are already seeing increasing temperatures, more extreme droughts and floods. We also know that wetlands and riparian margins are essential for regulating and protecting water flows and limiting sediment runoff during times of flood. So if changes are needed, how best we can all work together and cooperate so that everyone has access to abundant, clean water into the future, and te mana me te mauri o te wai is restored. And tonight it is an opportunity for Council to give a bit of an update on some of what is happening in the freshwater planning space, but more importantly, it's an opportunity for Council to hear from you. What's important about freshwater to you? What's worrying you about freshwater? What do you think needs to be done differently? What's your vision of the future for our freshwater and Te Taitokerau? I'm excited to be here this evening to welcome everyone to this online hui. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and kia ora Oriel, and to our speakers also. Tēnei te mihi atu ki a tātou katoa. Kia ora.
E nā koe i te kahurangi, nau i te kaiarehi, mā tātou katoa. Nō reira, tēnā koe mō tērā kōrero kia tātou. Thank you to our chair, and yes, very important opening remarks, and appreciate your experience that you bring both in Te Ao Māori and also too across the globe. So thank you very much. Look, I'd just like to say we will have some presentations, and before I introduce you to Ben Lee, our Planning and Policy Manager, at the end of the presentations from each of our guest speakers, we will then be having questions and answers. So if you have answers to share, please, questions and answers to share, please do so. So just want to encourage people, please, we really do want to hear your questions and have the panelists take the opportunity to respond. So on that, I'd like to hand over now some time to Ben Lee, our Planning and Policy Manager for Northland Regional Council. Ben Lee is here to discuss overall what the freshwater plan is, what that looks like, and why are we doing it. Nō reira, tēnā koe, Ben, kia ora.
Kia ora, Oriel. Tēnā koutou katoa. No ingarangi, no koroatia o kutupana. Engari, ko manaia te maunga e ru nei ki tākou ngākau. Ko manaia huki te whenua tupu. Kei kauri whangarei au e nohu ana. He kaupapa here mātua ahu kei te kaunihera arohi o Te Taitokerau. Ko Ben Lee ahau. Tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora, Ben.
Kia ora everyone, really nice to be here tonight. I'm going to be giving a quick run through of our freshwater plan and a bit of a background to it and a bit of a process. So first of all, I'm just going to give a bit of an overview of what Council does in the freshwater space. There's a lot that we do. I'll then touch on the government, central government, and what they've been directing us to do in regards to freshwater. I'll then drop in and talk a little bit about the freshwater plan work we're doing, the science, what the science is telling us, and then a bit of an indication of the level of change we think might be required to get us where we think we're going to need to get to. And lastly, I'm just going to touch on how you can get involved in this project. So just before I get into it, I just want to be clear about when we're talking about freshwater, we're talking about freshwater in all its forms, whether it's in awa, repo, and also groundwater. And when we're thinking about water and the impacts on water and the things we need to manage when it comes to water, we're talking about pollution and contaminants, and whether they're sediment or things like fecal contamination, but also things like water extraction, taking the water out of these water bodies for things like irrigation. It's also about loss of habitat. So, for example, when you remove the riparian vegetation, you take away that shading, which can help to support the ecosystems within water bodies. And lastly, climate change. With climate change, it's going to change the way our hydrological system works, and you're going to get things like more extreme droughts. So just a quick snapshot of all that the regional council does. So we've got a monitoring function. So we've got people out there that are out there measuring and taking measurements of water, and then a bunch of scientists back in the office that take that data and interpret it for us. We do flood hazard management. We build stop banks and that kind of things, and work with communities to try and come up with solutions to how to manage flooding risks. We provide a lot of advice and resources, putia, for a range of projects that are out there for helping to improve water quality. Freshwater pests is another area that we're involved in. We also get a bit involved in water resilience, so helping communities to be more resilient to things like droughts. We've got a civil defence team, for example, that plays a key role during those types of events. And lastly, in the area that sort of the freshwater plan is mostly focused on, is we've got the function around regulating the activities that impact on freshwater. So back in late-ish 2020, government came out with a brand new direction around how it wanted freshwater to be managed across the Motu. And these are sort of the three key objectives that the government are seeking with this new change. Firstly, it was an absolute stop on further degradation of freshwater. That was it. There was no more allowance to further degrade. They then wanted to see an improvement, and seeing some improvements to water quality within 5 years. And then within a generation to reverse that past damage and bring it back to a healthy state. So quite, some might say quite lofty objectives, but yeah, they set a pretty clear direction around the path that government anyway is wanting us to head when it comes to freshwater. A real key feature of government's direction is this concept of Te Mana o Te Wai, and the way that the government has applied this concept is it's put in place a new hierarchy for freshwater. So where before, when resource management decisions got made about how we use resources like freshwater, it was generally a balancing act between looking after that resource versus wanting to use that resource. So, and it ended up a bit of a balancing act. Now there's been quite a clear change, quite a fundamental change to how that happens. So now the well-being of water bodies and ecosystems is the first priority, i.e. that needs to be provided for. Second comes the health needs of people, and then third, sitting under that, is for those other uses of fresh water. Another key part of the Te Mana o Te Wai concept from central government is this strengthened requirement for Māori to be involved in fresh water. That includes being part of that the decision-making processes. So the freshwater plan, what it is essentially, it is the way that Northland, how we will implement that government's direction when it comes to managing freshwater. Some real key features of it is that we need to set some targets, the improvements we want to make to freshwater. So what is it, where do we want to see freshwater in time, and at a certain time, certain point in time, and they have to be time-bound goals around how we want to improve water. It'll also be a bunch of new rules for to regulate activities that impact on that freshwater to help us to get us to meeting those targets. And the other sort of third main aspect of it is then what are the actions that we, the regional council, will do to help support us getting us to improve freshwater. This is the timeline for how we're going to get there. We've been working on this since late 2020, where we've been engaging with a number of different people and groups and doing a lot of the behind the scenes work, the science, pulling together the information to slowly start building ourselves up into a point where we can start thinking about what this plan might look like. We're now entering a bit of a phase, starting now, where you're going to start to see more of us, and we're going to get out more and start engaging more with the community in Tangawhera, and the purpose of this kind of phase is getting an understanding around what's important about freshwater for people. We're then going to start to get into a phase of starting to pull together some ideas around a bit of a consultation document, and then mid-year looking to put that out to use that as a catalyst to start conversations around where do we want to be with freshwater, what are the targets we want to set, what do people think we need to do to get there. We'll take that feedback in, and then we'll look to start the formal process, i.e. we notify it and put it out for formal submissions at this stage, April 2024, but there's a possibility that it might get shifted out a bit as we go through the process. We are legally required to have to notify that, so that last date has to be before the end of 2024. So the science that the regional councils does is there's sort of three big issues that are coming through in terms of the science. The first thing is sediment. It is a really significant contaminant up here, and is having some pretty significant impacts within the freshwater bodies themselves, but really importantly for us up here, it's also having a big impact into the places where that freshwater all drains, i.e. into our estuaries and our harbours. Another big issue for us is E. coli. Now, E. coli is an indicator for the bugs that can make you sick, and they come from the guts, from the gut of mammals and birds, from their fecal contamination. And so our science is telling us that we've got way too much of it here in Northland. The last thing for us, in terms of the insects, the small insects that live in our freshwater, what they're showing us is that they're mainly the ones that we're finding are only those that are there that can actually tolerate polluted water. So we're not seeing the diversity of small insects you normally find in a much more healthier freshwater system. A big key feature of what government has set is this notion of bottom lines. So it's basically said that as an absolute minimum across the country, the freshwater needs to be at a certain level for a range of different freshwater measures, the different ways that we, pardon me, that we measure freshwater. And so as a minimum, we have to lift ourselves up to that bottom line. For us, in Northland, many of our streams and rivers do not meet those bottom lines. So, for example, measures for aquatic insects and things like E. coli as well. And for E. coli, we're sitting in a place where we're over 90% of our freshwater bodies are not meeting that bottom line. So, just to meet bottom lines, there's going to need to be some large-scale changes. Now, there's a range of tools out there that can get us to that point, or we think might be able to getting us to this point. And so I've just sort of highlighted some of those things on the screen. We know that wetlands are a really important, play a really important role as filters in our freshwater systems. We know the value of fencing off waterways and keeping stock out of waterways and riparian planting, the value that adds. We could be looking at things like our most erodible land, that's steep land, the potential for encouraging conversion of that, getting the stock off that, and encouraging that into other types of land use, for instance, forest, which has less impact on things like sediment. And also looking at other techniques as well. So where you do have steep pasture, the possibility of continuing to graze it, but can you use things like space planting of poplars to get the trees to help stabilize, and then you can still graze underneath. This is really key. It's a long game. It's going to take us a really long time to improve. And sort of 3 key points here that I want to make is that firstly, whatever actions we decide we need to do to get there, it will take time for people to implement them. They will come at a cost for people, and so we need to allow people some time to adapt and to transition into this new way. The other thing is that some actions will have an immediate impact. So we know that for things like E. coli, you can do things and you can see a pretty quick response within the water body itself to those actions for E. coli. But there's other things that take much longer to respond, and sediment is a big one. And so you can put in the actions, but it can still take a long time for you then to pick up the impact of those actions within our freshwater systems. And particularly in places like estuaries and harbours, which are right at the bottom of those systems, the very end point for where our sediment goes. It can take a long time to see the impacts right down at the bottom. So how to get involved? Firstly, it's really an open invitation. If you want to meet, if you want to talk with us, if you want us to come out, you want us to walk your why and talk to us about what's important to you about freshwater, then please get in contact. Another way is you can visit our website, and on our website we've got a bit of a tool, a mapping tool. It's kind of it allows you to go in and asks a series of questions about what's important about your why, and then your thoughts around what can be done to improve it, and the links there. If you just want to be updated on what's going on, again, please get in contact and we can keep you updated. I talked about earlier on the timeline that the big sort of big time for us to get out and really engage as well is when we release our consultation document, which is we're looking at next year. That's when you'll start to see some thinking and some ideas and some options around what could we do with water. It can be quite hard with a blank sheet of paper trying to sort of provide thoughts and ideas around things. What we're doing with the consultation document is putting some stuff out there to help whet people's appetites and get the conversation going, to hopefully make it easier for people to be able to provide us that feedback. And there's our contact details there on screen. Otherwise, if you just Google us, you can find our contact details online. That's it from me tonight, everyone. Thank you very much for listening. Do appreciate your time.
Kia ora, Ben. Thank you so much for that presentation. It's an indication of a huge amount of work that is ahead of us and currently being undertaken. Thank you for simplifying what is often complex, and appreciate your time. Look, I'm just going to now I wanted to now introduce our next guest speaker. Many will know Deloraine Armstrong is a staunch hapu advocate for our taiao. She's been actively involved in Kaitaki Wai Māori, and I want to thank her for joining us tonight. She is presenting tonight as the co-chair for the Tangata Whenua Water Advisory Group. What I'd like to do is leave it for Deloraine to talk more about that group. But Deloraine, no mai haere mai, he mihi aroha, he mihi miharo tēnei kia koe, Deloraine, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Oriel. Thank you for the introduction. Ko wai ahau, he uri no Te Orewai no Ngāti Hine. I'm a hapu kaitiaki from Ngāti Hine, and also work with a collective of kaitiaki in the Whangarei district in the upper Wairua subcatchment with ngā kaitiaki o ngā Wai Māori. So first off, I'd just like to talk to you about what I see as some of the challenges that we face in terms of fresh water, and then present some of the work that the Tangata Whenua Water Advisory Group has been doing in the freshwater space. And what we see is some of the key opportunities for tangata whenua to get involved in the freshwater planning reforms that are coming. I can't change the slide. Can someone change it for me? Thank you. So these are what we think some of the key challenges are. We have a legacy of colonisation and bad management decisions that have left our way in a bad way, as we've already heard. So not only do we have to change where, what, and how we are doing things, including farming, we also need to change how we make decisions about freshwater as well. These are not small changes that are needed. As the ever-increasing effects of climate change are felt, like last week's torrential tropical weather bomb, increasingly severe droughts, storms and floods, rising temperatures and sea levels, more wildfires, and the ability of our awa, our roto and repo to adapt to these changes is going to be critical. We know that the healthier the ecosystems are, the more resilient it will be to climate change, as we heard Tui talk about as well earlier. So it's not good news that our freshwater is in a dire state. We don't have long to fix the situation so that our waterways, our communities are healthy and are best positioned to deal with the increasing impacts of global warming. Tangata whenua need to be empowered and enabled so we can properly fulfil our kaitiaki roles and obligations, and also ensure that we can access the safe and clean water we need given the only increasing pressures we know climate change is bringing. Can I change the next slide? Thank you. It's a huge challenge. How can we turn around how freshwater is being treated and valued? How can we weave together two different worldviews, one based on whakapapa and ngā atua, that treasures wai as a taonga and living being, and the other based on man having dominion over nature and seeing water as a resource to be used and profited from? Dave Milner and myself are the co-chairs of the Tangata Whenua Water Advisory Group, a rōpū of kaitiaki and technicians from different professional backgrounds who all whakapapa Te Taitokerau. And you heard earlier that Tui was a foundation member of our group until she recently became a councillor and chair of NRC. So I'd like to acknowledge all the members of the group, past and present, who have all been instrumental since the beginning. And as you'll see, if I zoomed in on this, the picture on the slide now, you can see that Tui is the co-author of the first report produced by the group earlier this year. That's our stage 1 report. And she led us through a series of wānanga, looking at all the issues and values identified by various hapu and iwi management plans that council had been given and others to come up with some founding advice, which we have since built on. TTWAG was set up by NRC to provide advice to council on what this new freshwater planning regime might look like from a tangata whenua perspective. We're also asked to give council advice on how they could engage with tangata whenua on the freshwater plan change, and council adopted our advice in August. This online hui was one of our recommendations to be a first in a series of hui, both online and face-to-face throughout the council's freshwater plan process, along with various other recommendations. I've already mentioned the initial work that we did led by Tui. We're now working on recommendations that might go into the freshwater plan change itself from a tangata whenua perspective as a platform so that whānau, marae, hapu and iwi can add their own perspectives and voices as council develops its plan change over the next few years. TTWAG has been fortunate to have had help from a number of specialist technicians, including Puawaikake, Amy Matthew, Ripeka Reid, and others in drafting our recommendations. We'd particularly like to acknowledge Matua Hori Parata and other tohunga who've given us some real motivational words of wisdom from when we had wānanga Ngā Raratunua Marae in August and times after that as well. So TTWAG is also working on 6 case studies currently, focusing on the lessons learned in terms of what did and didn't work in engaging tangata whenua in decision-making and implementation. We're looking at the Opodi Aquifer, the Hikurangi Repo, the Wairua Awa, Poroti Springs, and these projects have been funded by MFE through their Te Mana o Te Wai Fund and Ngā Whitiki Ngā Punawai o Hokianga. These case studies will also help frame our recommendations to Council. Thank you. Next slide. Also wanted to highlight some of our thinking and how we see the advice we've been asked to give Council, providing that platform or holding place for everyone to add as Council develops its freshwater plan change in the next couple of years. We've been clear to Council that our advice is that they need to support everyone so they can engage in this freshwater plan change mahi if they wish to, and that our advice does not constitute consultation or engagement with tangata whenua. We don't have a mandate to speak on behalf of anyone. We are providing our advice as individuals with some expertise in this space. It's also impossible to provide advice at the level of detail that can only come from whānau, from hapu and marae and kaitiaki on the ground. So our advice is by necessity high level. We hope we will provide a framework for others to add to reflect the different values, perspectives that exist across Te Taitokerau. We know there are many values and issues of concern about the state of our freshwater that are common across Te Taitokerau. But central to all of our thinking is Te Hurihanga Wai. We've included what we're proposing for a statement to what Te Mana me Te Mauri o Te Wai means in Taitokerau as a starting point for others to comment on when the Council goes out with its draft plan next year. We've also come up with the vision, values, objectives to inform policies which are high level enough to be able to use everywhere, allowing each marae, hapu and whānau to add to these region-wide provisions to recognise everyone's particular kawa, tikanga and mātauranga. Also want to stress that weaving together Te Ao Māori and the Western world views to improve the Māori of our wai is very hard. For example, duties and roles associated with rangatiratanga, kaitiakitanga can only be carried out by whānau on their marae amongst hapu and iwi, as we have the responsibility through whakapapa to care for and protect our wai. It's hard for Council to fully understand some of the concepts that are fundamental to how tangata whenua look after wai. Whatever words end up in Council's freshwater plan, it's critical that we work to make sure that implementation must involve tangata whenua, not just in water monitoring, but particularly in the decision-making on consents needed under the freshwater plan, as one example. It's going to take time, and it's definitely going to take resources for tangata whenua to be engaged in this. And the last slide. So it's a huge task ahead, and we've had an opportunity in the next couple of years to influence what goes into the new freshwater plan rules for Taitokerau. It's our opportunity to have a say in what the stick looks like and when Council will use that stick. If you're always complaining about resource consent processes and had enough of our waterways being mistreated, then this is an excellent opportunity to make a difference, to have a say, and what will happen in the future. We all need to support each other and work together if we really want to see the changes in our freshwater and how it's looked after the way we want to. We've got some excellent projects and initiatives happening, and this freshwater plan change can also look at what support and resourcing council provides to support kaitiaki on the ground, whether that's to do monitoring, restoration and enhancement. We need to think about the carrots we'd like to see being used as well as sticks. This is a step on a long journey, as Ben said, as we all know. So I'd encourage everyone to get involved in this new freshwater plan change. TTWAG, the Te Taitokerau Water Advisory Group, still has work to do. And we all need to get our heads around all the reforms that are in track and coming. But this is our opportunity to influence what we want to see happening in Taitokerau. Kia ora. Thank you.
Oh, kia ora, Delaraine. I had a bit of a smile when you talked carrots and sticks. So thank you for making it loud and clear. Also want to say the beauty of te mana me te mauri o te wai and the whakapapa of te hurihanga wai is something to inspire all of us, not just Māori. And for that to be shared by the Tangata Whenua Water Advisory Group is a taonga for all of us now to aspire to. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for all the iwi and hapu that you represent tonight as well too. Nō reira, tēnā koe. So look, on that, I am now going to pass the time over to our Tāhuhu Rangapu, our Chief Executive of the Northern Regional Council, to be able to now share the NRC's commitment to its relationship with tangata whenua, and not only in terms of the Korero, but actually what are we going to do about it? So that is a big challenge for the Northern Regional Council. Nō reira, tēnā koe, Jono, I'll leave that Korero to you. Kia ora.
Pēnā koutou katoa. Tēnā koe Oriole, motu karakia. Ko Waiahau, ko Whanganui te awa, ko Taranaki te maunga, no Wanganui ahau, engari, e noho ana ahau ki tū tukaka, ko Jonathan Gibber toku ingoa, ko ahau te Tāhuhu Rangapu, o te Kaunihera Arohi o Te Taitokerau. Good evening, everybody. Really proud to be here and really stoked to be here to support this online hui this evening, and to talk about such a critically important topic. I'd also like to acknowledge our other speakers that have come before me and the other ones that are to come after. Just waiting for my slide. Cool. I've been asked tonight just to cover a bit of a broader overview of NRC's commitment and relationship with tangata whenua, the different structures that we have in place and the support that we provide for tangata whenua to engage and participate with council on this freshwater mahi. As other presenters have already said this evening, freshwater management and the freshwater plan change and implementing the essential freshwater package is going to be one of the most important and critical topics and areas that this council is going to address this term. And it's critically important that we provide as many opportunities and forums and avenues for tangata whenua to participate in that discussion. As Delaraine has just said before, this is the time at the policy part of the process where you can really set the policies, the rules, how applications are going to be considered. I know there's a lot of frustration out there at times as to how resource consents are processed, and it's at the policies stage in the plan change process that you get to set that planning regime that has such an important impact at the consenting stage. So again, really encourage people to get involved in this process. So just broadly, I guess, and just to step back a little bit, and just to talk about NRC's broader commitment to partnerships with tangata whenua. I think over the last couple of years, NRC's been on quite a journey, and also want to acknowledge everyone that's been part of that journey with NRC. There have been many iwi leaders, iwi hapu leaders that have leaned in and supported NRC on that journey. We have our Te Taitokerau Māori and Council Working Party. It's a working party of 30 members that includes all of our 9 councillors and 21 iwi and hapu members. And they've worked with council over the last 9 years as we've looked at ways and means of improving the partnerships that we have with iwi and hapu, support iwi and hapu capacity and capability, and improve our own capacity and capability. One of the key outcomes of that mahi that we should all be very proud of is the establishment of Māori seats that council's had in the last term, and wanting to acknowledge Chair Shortland not only coming in on one of those Māori seats, but also being the first wahine Māori in a chair position for regional council. So kia ora tui. As Deloraine referred to before, one of the groups that works with TTMAC is the Tangata Whenua Water Advisory Group, which Deloraine is co-chair of. And again, that's been a really critical group that's there and is supporting council as we look at fulfilling our obligations to tangata whenua as we proceed with creating this freshwater plan change. Another really important outcome within the last 12 months was the adoption of Taekia, NRC's Te Tiriti-based strategy and implementation plan. Includes 20 odd or more than 20 specific actions that are designed at improving NRC's capacity and capability to partner with iwi and hapu, but also has many critical actions there that are aimed for us to be able to help iwi and hapu have the capacity to engage with NRC in the functions that we're here to deliver. Also, we've got some really great examples in Taitokerau around co-governance. First being the Te Aotearoa Tohi Beach Board, established through treaty settlement for Te Hiku Iwi, and more recently the Kaipara Moana Remediation Joint Committee, a joint committee of Kaipara Uri, Auckland Council and Northland Regional Council with a specific aim at progressing environmental remediation within the Kaipara catchment. Lastly, I just wanted to really highlight as well Mana Whakahonua Rohi. It's a specific provision within the Resource Management Act that provides for iwi and hapu to have a relationship with council and outline and confirm what that commitment of council is to iwi and hapu as we go through the RMA plan change processes. We currently have 2 Mana Whakahonua Rohi in place, one with Patu Harakiki and the other one with Ngāti Arehia. And I guess I'm putting it here just as a plug for that. It's a really good way of setting out those how we will engage before the plan change processes come around, and how we can provide resources to support those processes.
Moving
on, I just wanted, there are a few other things just to highlight, I guess. And this is by no means everything, but just a few things to highlight while we've got people online for this hui. I think it was Deloraine who mentioned iwi and hapu environmental management plans previously. NRC provides some funding support for iwi and hapu to develop iwi or hapu environmental management plans. These are really important documents, both for the iwi and hapu, but also for council, as it provides a really good steer and direction from iwi and hapu as to what are the critical environmental aspects and things that you want council to focus on when we're doing our resource management planning. We've also got a fund that's available to support Kaitiaki to undertake monitoring Both of these are funds that you can find out more about on our webpage and find out how to apply for funding. Also like to make a plug for our scholarship program. We have a scholarship program that provides 6 scholarships every year. 3 of those are specifically targeted at supporting Te Taitokerau kaitiaki. We're also now expanding that to provide work experience or work at NRC, so that you not only get the scholarship to support going through tertiary education, but also then work back with the regional council as well.
Order.
What do we got? As I mentioned before, freshwater is going to be one of the critical focuses for this council. We have funding available to support iwi and hapu to engage with council, to engage in this process. Through our long-term plan, the last council set aside $250,000 annually as a fund to support implementation of Te Manua Te Wai as directed through the Freshwater NPS. We're working with TTMAC as to how best to get that funding out the door and out to iwi and hapu, and that's something that we'll continue to work with TTMAC through the new term. There's also MFE funding that is available out there. There are 5 different iwi or hapu groups that have received Te Manua Te Wai funding and that are actively working with their hapu, with their whānau on the ground to identify their priorities, and that NRC will be looking to support and work with, and to see how those that mahi can best feed into and influence the freshwater plan change. There's always more MFE funding coming, so again, just a recognition that while NRC also gets funding from MFE, there's also quite a substantial amount of funding available there for iwi and hapu to tap into. There was recently $24 million nationwide reallocated towards supporting tangata whenua participation in the essential freshwater implementation, with $10.5 million specifically there for iwi and hapu to tap into. So again, I'd encourage you to have a look at that. If you need to find out more about it, and feel free to contact NRC as well, and we'll see what we can do to put you in touch with MFE. Again, my final slide here, and I guess the last, again, it's just a real big plug to really get engaged in this part of the process. I know firsthand, I'm an RMA policy planner by trade. I've been involved in most of our regional plans, and I know it can be a really long process, and it can seem sometimes like, what's the point? But the point is really, when you come to the resource consent stage, often your hands are a little bit tied around some of the provisions that are in the plan, which direct those resource consents involved in this part of the process to influence what the policies are, what the rules are, how they're going to be applied, who's going to be involved in the process. So now's the time to get involved, to influence the plan, and I really encourage you all to get in contact with council, with Ben and the team. We'll be out there in as many different avenues and forums as we can, and really keen to get in touch and talk, and yeah, it's critical for our future, and really encourage you to get involved. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Jono. Just checking people can hear me while this comes up on while the PowerPoint comes up. Oh, kia ora. Look, I just want to, Jono, just before we go on to the next PowerPoint presentation, there's a question that's come through directly for you, so I'm just going to pause there from our Te Tuahine Dallas no Te Hokianga. A question for you, Jono. Yeah, that's a good question. As the new Chief Executive, Jono, what do you aspire to achieve most in your role?
I'm a natural resources planner. Every CEO has their own priorities and their own things that they're looking for, but I'm a natural resources planner, so I'm about the taiao, and I'm about outcomes on the ground. It's all very well having great systems and processes in place and having great policies, but I really want to see outcomes on the ground for our community. I've got a 6-year-old son, and that was one of the main motivating factors for me standing it to try and apply to be CEO. Is I want our children to look back on our generation and be proud of the decisions that we've made, and not kick the can down the road. So for me, it's outcomes on the ground and for our kids.
Kia ora, and that we have a common bond. Jono, thank you. Tēnā koe. Look, now I would like to introduce our next speaker, and it's great that Jono has shared some of the work or some of the funding that's been available, particularly through the Ministry for Environment, because our next speaker, Kelly Murphy, who is the program lead for Mehe Wai at Te Rarawa, is doing exactly what we're talking about, leading a project for her iwi in terms of getting in, owning what happens in the freshwater space for Te Rarawa and some of the funding that they've been able to source and the difference they're making on the ground. E te tuhine nau mai, haere mai. Thank you for joining us tonight. Much appreciated. And all the hard work you do too in Te Rarawa. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Te kaha o te wai, te tapu o te wai, te whakapapa o te wai, te hurunga o te wai, te mana o te wai. Tuatahi me mihi ki te rongorawa, nana ngā mea katoa. Tuarua me mihi ka tika ki te reo karanga me te reo mihi. Tuatoru me mihi ki te hunga mate, rātou kia rātou. Tātou kia tātou, te hunga ora e hui nei, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Kelly taku, kia ora. Ko Kelly taku ingoa, ko Puke Maire toku maunga, ko Ngātororangi toku awa, ko Ngāti Whakaue toku hapu, ko te arawa te iwi. I'm here tonight to speak about Mehe Wai. Thank you all for having me. So, Mehe Wai. Mehe Wai is Te Runanga o Te Rarawa's Te Mana o Te Wai program funded by Ministry for the Environment. Mehe Wai means to be like water, and that name was gifted to us by Joe Murray so that we can flow over, under and around any obstacles that will actually appear in the next few years. And the program runs from April 2022 to June 2025 and covers the rohe of Te Rarawa and is available to the 23 marae of Te Rarawa. So our objectives with MFA are to build the capacity and capabilities of tangata whenua to make decisions for freshwater management and to improve the health of freshwater bodies of importance to tangata whenua. We aim to do this by taking a pepeha whole ecosystem or place-based approach to planning, resourcing and implementation. Deepening the relationships of people to the environment, including a focus on aspirations as opposed to compliance. And we want to demystify government for tangata whenua and te ao Māori for government. We're not that scary. And so doing this is a wonderful, amazing team. So for our team overview, we have a Kāhui Wai, which is made up of the friends and partners of Mehe Wai. The partners include MFE, DOC and Northern Regional Council. And then the dark blue are our current team. So there's an engagement lead who's leading out the engagement and he has 2 support people. GIS data collection, program lead, which is myself, a land use advisor, operations manager and administrator. The wānanga facilitator is Joe Murray and she does the deep dive wānanga with marae. And then we're also going to contract in a data scientist shortly. And then by January, we'll have our kaimahi tuakana, which are project coordinators. We'll have up to 3 of those by January and up to 5 kaimahi taina, who are a monitoring team that we will build and train over the next few years to be monitoring the Te Rarawa rohe. So there's 2 streams to Mehe Wai. So tuatahi, the first one is engagement with marae, hapu, community and landowners. The overarching aspect of this is deep listening. We are always listening and we're listening so that we understand the freshwater aspirations and values of tangata whenua. And then once we have those captured, then we translate those into the regional plan change and integrated catchment plans. And then further down the path, we will get into integrated land management plans, which include freshwater farm plans. The second stream, tuarua, is data collection, storage, analytics, and reporting. This is, at the moment, that looks like a holistic data framework and a monitoring plan for baseline data and beyond. So we want no awa or person left behind. Storage is we have a server within Te Taitokerau because data sovereignty is a question that comes up a lot in the work that we do. So we have ArcGIS Enterprise and our own server so that all the data is stored there. And then we will then come up with data sovereignty agreements with every single marae that we engage with. Analytics is ArcGIS, Labs, and the Tile Health Dashboard. So the Tile Health Dashboard is where we're getting the data scientists in so that we can create an online resource that marae can sign into and see the health of their environment and where they are in relation to their aspirations. So that will analyze and it will also be part of the reporting. Another part of the reporting is informing of risk and improvement to Northern Regional Council or other people because our monitoring will be quite extensive. So when these two streams come together, we will see integrated land management plans, including freshwater farm plans, linking to catchment context. We will see an extensive monitoring program underway for Te Taitokerau. We have marae freshwater restoration projects planned and implemented. So each marae has seed funding to plan and implement their own freshwater restoration. Resources will be wrapped around the aspirations of tangata whenua community and landowners to achieve positive freshwater outcomes. And this Tile Health Dashboard is being fed by the monitoring program and utilised by tangata whenua to make decisions for freshwater. Gonna change. Okay, need a drink of water for this one. It's a bit long.
Yeah.
Okay, so challenges and opportunities. The challenges are large. The quality and abundance of clean fresh water is compromised through poor land use practices and lack of infrastructure to enable access to water, which is a massive thing for mana whenua and marae. Marae communities are very busy with a great number of responsibilities and little time to attend to them all. While skilled in many areas, marae can lack capability in matters specific to the Mihiwai initiative. Through the long-term impacts of colonisation, whānau Māori may be primarily focused on working to survive with few spare resources to understand, prioritise and connect to Te Taio. There are concerns about data sharing and data sovereignty, and people are wary of fresh obligations and regulations for rural land use, fearing costs, additional work and lost local decision-making power. Of course, with all the challenges comes opportunities, and so the way that we're trying to address these is through the following. Why is whanaunga te tangata whenua? So there is existing and implicit understanding of the interconnectedness of people and te taio. Capturing this is the concept ko wai'o. Who am I? I am water. Catchment management plans and engaging and supporting individual landowners can be expected to lead to restoration and improve water quality. Paid kaimahi positions will provide additional working hands to the marae for this mahi. Support from Mihiwai and from project friends and partners will bring additional skills to the service of marae. The kaimahi tuakana and kaimahi teina structure will help support ongoing capability development in each rohe. Mihiwai has processes focused on culturally rich wānanga, taking a pepeha approach, weaving in practices of tupuna and making connections to Matauranga marae and Maramataka. Marae leadership makes all aspects of the project subject to their approval and support. Mihiwai acts as a bridge between hapu, government and other organisations and institutions, sharing perspectives, concerns, insights and fresh ideas so that planning and initiatives for fresh water are more likely to be responsive to local circumstances. I'm just going to read this. So this is another challenge. A holistic approach to environmental monitoring cannot ignore social and cultural values. Traditional monitoring carried out by Māori people was an essential part of survival in New Zealand. They developed an in-depth understanding of the environment upon which they depended. Their traditional views of the environment reflects an integrated approach that needs to be incorporated into a national or regional monitoring system by involving Māori people in planning and decision-making at the regional level. The Resource Management Act 1991 clearly expects consultation to occur between the tangata whenua and local authorities. Māori people with traditional knowledge of the environment and an understanding of traditional environmental indicators need to be empowered to contribute to a bicultural monitoring system. Assurance of funding for any work undertaken and the provision of training programs may be prerequisites for Māori input into this monitoring process. And that sounds great, and it's what we're doing now. And I'd also like to acknowledge Tui Shortland because I actually got it off her website. But this was written to MFE in a report in 1991. So we're over 30 years later. I was a new student at Ahipara Primary School when that came out, and here we are now. So we know what needs to be done, and we've known what has needed to be done for a very long time. So I think what's most important is now what we do. So what do we do? So toku wai, my water. I would just really like to propose that people get connected with their local water body. So tahi, 1, what is your local freshwater body? What's its name, its location, and who are the hapu marae connected to it? Rua, 2, kia tau, sit and listen and wait to become still. Whakarongo ki te ha o te tao, listen to the breath of the environment. What do you see, hear, feel, smell, taste? What is the wai saying to you? What is your relationship to wai? And 3, toru, share. With mihi wai, so that's us, with Northland Regional Council, and with everybody around you. And yeah, that's pretty much me for tonight. Thank you very much for having me. Ko Māori.
Kia ora, Kelly. No, thank you. We appreciate your time and the work. Thank you, and for sharing that as well too. And it actually reminded me that last night, it reminded me of the work that was done with the Kawa Waiora report as well too, the research report for the kaitiaki as well, just capturing the stories and the narratives that you've talked about there as reminding us how simple it is and how important it is to understand what the wai means to us. So thank you, Kelly. Look, that was our final presentation. So now can I just encourage people who are still with us having dinner as well to send through some questions now that I want to ask the panelists as we move now with all of the panelists for all of us to see. And Kelly, I'd like to start with you in terms of the questions while we look to see other questions coming through. One of the things I think is that it can be complicated, the work that's happening when you think about it all, and your advice to Māori landowners and whānau in the freshwater planning space. Again, what should they be focusing on given your kōrero tonight?
Say just that last slide. Really, because it can get overwhelming. I mean, it's even overwhelming for us. There's a lot to do, but I think just talk to each other, connect with regional council, connect with your local Te Mana o Te Wai program if you have one. But yeah, obviously for Te Rarawa, always welcome to come and see us. But yeah, just focus on your connection.
Kia ora, Kelly. I'm going to ask that same question of Deloraine. If she is there, Deloraine, again, the question to you is, what's your advice for Māori landowners, whānau? What do you think now, if you could say the one thing they should be focusing on right now through all of this complexity?
Yeah, kia ora, and thank you, Kelly, for your presentation. Awesome mahi you guys are doing up there. We learn so much from the work that Te Rarawa is doing. I think the key thing is to keep it simple and start with and be guided by what are your aspirations for your wai? What is it that you want your wai to be for your mokopuna? So if we start there, then I think we begin to set a plan and process, which is when we start to connect with each other, as Kelly talks about. Whether it's going to be NRC, whether it's going to be down the marae, we go down, we talk to other whānau, because of course wherever our way is, it came from somewhere before us and it's going somewhere after us. So we're all connected in terms of our interests and the mahi that we commit to do for our way. So yeah, that would be my advice. Start simple. What are the aspirations? And then have a plan to what you want to do, the small things first, you know, and we tend to, I think we've seen that often what's successful is if you go where the strength is, where the ability and opportunity is. So it might be that you've got few people down at the marae who are quite interested in maybe planting a riparian buffer and area, cleaning it up, then maybe start there and things grow from there. Often we find that strength grows and builds when others see success and they see things happening. They come on board and get behind, and then you need to grow that same concept. Each one of us can look at each of our hapori wai and be able to imagine what it is that we want that way to be in the future. It can be complex, but I think we're likely to be more successful if we try and simplify it as far as we can. And then, as Kelly and others have said, connect together and try and build, try and put building blocks in place that can actually achieve the things we're looking for, and seek resources from a number of places. There's some great ideas that Jono shared tonight with us.
Yes, well, I'll give him a heads up. I'm going to ask him a question about support from Council Sue, but I want to go to our chair because I know of Tui's work, particularly around climate emergency, Tui, and climate emergency. And so if you link what we're talking about here and the work you've done around the climate crisis, climate emergency, work that you've been involved in across the world, what is your encouragement for whānau hapu and our hapori to consider this work? What is it that you think should be focused on? Kia ora.
Kia ora, Oreo. Ngā mihi hoki kia koutou ngā kai kōrero, ko kōrero here nei. You know, for quite some time in the climate negotiations internationally, we have been trying to bring water into the negotiations. Water, biodiversity, and climate are critically linked. We can't fix water without fixing biodiversity. We can't fix climate without fixing biodiversity and water. And so, you know, this is why Te Hurihanga Wai is so important, because it brings us back to the understanding of the essential dynamics of the ecosystems that we understand, that begin in the heavens with rangi nui e tūnei and then come all the way around to Papatuanuku and back again. And so, you know, for over 20 years now, we know that the Pacific has been ringing the alarm on climate, and it's taken a long, long time to finally land on this universal agreement that we've all committed to. And there's still some more understandings and you know, growth on this journey that needs to happen. So I actually think that our whānau are on the right path. You know, we've been leaders in this space. We have here in Te Taitokerau been ringing the alarm for 20 plus years as well, on climate, on biodiversity loss, on water. And so I do believe we need to reach out, you know, beyond our borders to the Pacific and beyond in terms of solutions. Technological transfer is a big issue internationally. And for us in the far north, many of our communities are a lot more like the Pacific than we are like Auckland, or than we are like the South Island, right? So these are some of the, you know, solutions and networking, much as what we're doing here on a regional scale. I think, you know, as Indigenous whānau as well, we have that ability to do that naturally, and the ability to reach out to the best scientists, you know, in the world to advise us, and the best engineers as well to link arms with our little region, our small but lofty region, and our aspirations. And I think that we're going to go far. So kia ora, Oreo.
Kia ora, Tui. Really important to acknowledge how important this kōrero is. Te mana me te mauri o te wai. So look, I'm going to go now to Jono and Ben. Our question is a bit of a follow-up to that, Jono and Ben. You can both answer together or look at, I'll start with Jono. What support can council provide to whānau and Māori landowners in this conversation? And what, if they want to find out more about the freshwater plan change and get involved? Kia ora.
Kia ora, Oriel. I'll have a go and Ben can fill the gaps where I missed stuff. There's two. So firstly, I go and have a look at the NRC webpage as a good starting point for information. There's your question there, Oriel. There are two sort of parts of it. One is the policy part of it and the freshwater plan change part of it, and the other part is the mahi on the ground, actually doing environmental remediation and monitoring. So first in the policy part, again, as I referred to in my presentation or discussion, we do have funds available to support the development of iwi and hapu environmental management plans, and those are really good documents for influencing these sorts of processes. As our chair, Tui, mentioned at the start, TWAG has had a look at all of those iwi and hapu management plans that have been developed to date, and those have been used to inform and influence what are the significant issues and the aspirations of mana whenua for freshwater in Te Taitokerau. We've also got monitoring, Mataranga Māori monitoring fund that's available. It is quite small at the moment, and this will be the first year that we're proactively providing that funding available. Again, look on the NRC website. I would say though that council has earmarked $250,000, and where and how that is actually allocated is a decision for this council. But that may well be more funding coming into that funding stream. For mahi on the ground, we have an environmental management, an environmental fund, so just under $1 million a year for landowners to apply for. So hapu with land, trusts, any landowner can apply for funding through the Enviro Fund for fencing of the awa, for other restoration activities. We've also got next financial year, I must admit, but next financial year, a new $500,000 fund that's coming online. That's for iwi, hapu and catchment groups to apply for. So that's funding for mahi on the ground that doesn't necessarily need to be associated with someone, with a group or individual that owns land. And lastly, I think I'd put a plug to as iwi and hapu to really have a relationship with MFE as well. There is always new funding that's coming on stream online through MFE. And again, if you want to have a talk with ourselves at Regional Council as to where some of those funding streams are and that sort of thing, then happy to have that korero as well. Over to you, Ben. Let's see how much I left.
I think you covered it really, really well, Jono. So, no, well done.
Yeah, thank you. Look, Jono, here's some of the I think the important questions that have come through from Kaitiaki, and so want you to have a go at this one. Is council looking? So the question is: council going to look at transferring powers and resources to Kaitiaki so they can do their own water monitoring?
Got a great question. As everyone is most likely aware, there hasn't been any transfer of powers in Te Taitokerau, and I'm only aware of a couple across the country where there's actually been transfer of powers. I referred earlier in the discussion around Taekia, the Te Treaty strategy that NRC adopted only 3 or 4 months ago, I think it was, that was adopted, and in there was one clear action around NRC being very open and interested in looking at transfer of powers with iwi and hapu. So I can't categorically say yes to whatever it is here, but I think I can say yes that NRC is up for that korero with iwi and hapu around what transfer of powers and functions would iwi and hapu would be interested in. And then there's a conversation as to, there are many things to consider when you're looking at transfer of powers. But I think the thing that NRC is up for the korero and would welcome that.
Yeah, kia ora, Jono, thank you for that. I just want to go to our chair as well too. Tui, do you have any comments that you'd like to add to that question? It's an important question.
Kia ora te whānau anō. Yes, transfer of powers, joint management agreements, mana whakahono. I feel like over the years, over the 20 years that I've been, working for iwi and hapu and campaigning for these types of shared decision making, that there has been movement, not only here in the north, but even the review of the local government, reforms that are coming out now. It's clear the direction from what I read. It's a 250-page report, and I've only skimmed it once, and we're yet to go through it as a council. But from what I read of it, there are two main pillars within that report, and one is, having a real localized idea around what implementing community well-being within the reforms. And secondly, and I might be biased, improving participation of tangata whenua and decision-making. And they actually go through examples of different types of co-governance that are happening around the country. And Jono mentioned Te Oneroa Tohe and the Kaipara Moana remediation group as well. So, we not only have some statutory directions around considering these types of matters, but we also have great capacity within the north as well, and great passion for it. And why not, explore that now? Now's the opportunity to do that, to ensure that all hands are on deck, right? This is the time that the greatest scientists in the world have told us we must act within 10 years to turn things around. And the regional council, we cannot do it alone. We need you all with us. And so we really need to understand how we can enshrine and ensure, meaningful shared decision-making in this space. So yeah, that's my whakaaro. And we'll explore that with those who come forward in the different ways. Kia ora.
Kia ora. I just want to acknowledge Deloraine has left the panelists, but I just want to share now a question for you, Jono, and it does continue around some of this, how do hapu and iwi get involved? And so the pātai is from our chat, what level of involvement do you think hapu can have in the monitoring role that NRC fulfills with regard to resource consents for district councils operated wastewater systems? So kia ora, Jono.
Yep. All the good questions.
Yeah, great questions. Kia ora.
I guess my response is similar to the one I provided just before. There's not a blueprint that I'm aware of for iwi or hapu monitoring of resource consent conditions, if I'm understanding the question correctly. But I guess, and to use a term that I just heard our chair use, NRC is very much up for the korero with iwi and hapu to explore what that might look like and how that might work. Like I said, there's no blueprint for it that I've seen anyway. But again, if there are iwi or hapu that wish to engage with NRC to explore what that might look like, then I'd encourage you to reach out and engage with NRC and to start that korero. I think there's great potential and opportunity there, and I think it's just a matter of working through what it is that iwi and hapu are looking for in that space, whether it's monitoring of resource consent conditions, whether it's state of the environment monitoring, what it might be, how it might be supported, and to work through the process of how it might look. But again, very, very much up for the korero.
Kia ora, Jono, thank you. I see Deloraine is back. I actually wanted to ask her question. If Deloraine can't hear me, I'm going to go to Kelly, and we're nearing the end of our session. So, Kelly, Deloraine, are you here?
Yes, I'm just hanging in there. If I disappear, it's my phone's gone flat, but I'm hanging in.
Deloraine, as we know, this is not just about tangata whenua. There are landowners, there are all so many people, so many communities that we need to work together with to make our waterways better for our young people coming through. What support do you think there is for landowners to be able to make better decisions that will support better waterways? Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you for the question. I think that honestly, there's differing support if you are a landowner of whenua Māori than if you are a landowner of general title whenua land, for example. So I think we could do a lot more to look to support our whenua Māori landowners. There's a lot more that needs to be done, and to be able to reignite and connect the mātauranga that is there at the kāinga. In terms of, I think, our non-Māori and general landowners, I think that there are a number of programs that are set up there to support that. We've got beef and lamb, we've got Fonterra, we've got a whole range of horticultural bodies that are working there with landowners. But I think it's often the whenua Māori landowners that are more disconnected, and I think in a state of uncertainty and not as clear support around our tangata whenua. So I think those are areas that, with some of the resources that have been described tonight, potentially we could look how hapori groups, whether they're hapu or marae oriented groups. We know that, and if I use the example of COVID, so during COVID, we saw how Māori communities were able to mobilise really quickly. And I believe that it can be similar for whenua Māori landowners to be able, because we're just really connected, to be able to mobilise. And I had a phone call this afternoon from one whānau member who was seeking help on an interaction with council, for example. And I think for our whānau to say, who can I call? Can I call somebody at council? Can I call a whānau member who might have a little bit of advice for me how I can get through this? I think that's one level. I think the other level is council systems can be very complex. They're very bureaucratic. And if you're in the house, it's all good. If you're outside the house, it's like a mountain. It's like a mountain to try to scale to actually make our way through some of these complicated things. So it would be great if there was more work, and I think these opportunities we've got now in Te Manawa Te Wai and the freshwater plan change, there are opportunities now to look at ways that systems can be more user-friendly, can be more efficient, and certainly more effective for the outcomes that we're looking for. Kia ora.
Well spoken. Thank you, Deloraine. Look, we are coming to the end of the evening in our webinar, but I'd like to go back to our chair for closing remarks, and then one final point, and then I will close with karakia. Tui, any final closing comments? Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora tātou. I'd just like to say I'm going to use the words that Jono used. I too am proud of this evening. I thank everybody for their participation. You know, we're going to need to have some genuine discussions and some challenging and confronting discussions over the next few years as we traverse the plan changes and the capacity building and the shared decision making that we need in the North. But we're not alone. This is the thing. I know that in each of our positions that we bring many people with us, we bring our ancestors with us, and we bring our mokopuna as well. And I would like to see more youth. This is another thing that I'll be working on. We will soon be announcing our new council structure. We have our next council meeting on the 22nd of November. So you'll likely see some new changes within the council that haven't been in council before. And my aim too during next year is to increase the voice of youth. I don't want us to hand over to them when everything is gone. You know, we need to bring them in the room now. And I know that many iwi and hapu are already doing that. And we will look to you to, you know, make some recommendations. Jono's already talked about scholarships and paid in-house work. You know, these are the types of changes that we need. And so I'd mihi to you all in all of your efforts. And thank you so much for sharing. I look forward to connecting more with everybody. And as you've heard from Jono and others of our staff, they're eager to do that as well as we bring Te Ao Māori into the room and we entrench and ensure that it is part of the future of ensuring te mana me te Māori o te wai mo te Taitokerau. Nā reira, hure no te whare, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai no tātou.
Kia ora, tēnā koe e te kahurangi. Thank you to all of you with all the questions that we never got to answer. All I can say is freshwater@nrc.govt.nz. As a closing comment from us, we would love to meet with you and thank you for asking, and we're happy to accept the invite. On that, now I'd like to close us with a karakia. My moko is knocking at my door, ready for her bedtime story. So on all of that, thank you for also the time you've given up tonight. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia inoi tātou. Kia tātou katoa. Kia te whai o tō tātou āriki a ihu karaiti, me te aroha o tātua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tāpū. Ake, āmine. Kia ora, ka kite, pomari.